Hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome back to our story. The story of Amadeus Aeon, of course. When last we left off, our hero Amadeus traveled with young Alize and helped her resolve a long sought-after conflict within her mind, to which was what happened during the calamity, and more importantly, where did her grandfather disappear to? All these answers she discovered within the final coils of Bahamut. With that in mind, Amadeus and a party of adventurers decided to take up her request and helped young Alize traverse these treacherous coils, and within she found her answers. Master Louisoix had perished, but was not gone, for he was brought back from the ethereal abyss by none other than the dread-worn Bahamut himself. And that over the course of these years since the calamity passed, the Elder Primal had begun reconstructing his body in order to unleash his fury upon the realm once more. Among these pawns, of course, was another Legatus, one from the past, Legatus Nell von Darnus, who had sought to seize control of the Red Moon Dalamon for his own purposes, but had failed to do so because he did not realize that Bahamut was the prisoner which was held inside of Dalamud. And by the time it was figured out, well, everyone involved with the Meteor Project had already come under to the thrall of Bahamut. And so, with this truth in mind, Alize sought to disable the coils and halt Bahamut's regeneration. Sorry. And, with the help of our team of adventurers, we succeeded in doing so. But before we could get to the last and final coil, there we were greeted by Alize and Alphino's grandfather, Louisoix himself, which, to our surprise, he took on the form of a primal, the immortal phoenix. So, our team had fought a rigorous battle against Louisoix in primal form, and caused his ethereal form to deteriorate back into the ether from whence it came. This, of course, was not our initial intention, as we wanted to find another course for this to steer in, but we were given consent by Alphino and Alize to put a stop to their grandfather no matter the cost. Traveling with us, of course, was a loyal retainer to Master Louisoix, and he had decided that he would come with us so he could protect the twins, as he was bid by Urianger. And because he knew Master Louisoix personally, he thought it was a way as to make amends for their troubled past and history of which they shared. And so, after defeating Louisoix in primal form, he has finally regained his senses and tells us the full story of what took place that dreadful day in the calamity when Bahamut rained hell on earth. After learning the truth, he disables the last coil, and now it is entrusted to us and the twins to defeat Bahamut, which we accomplish. Afterwards, it's agreed that Bahamut should not be known. Sorry, sound effects there. And then, after which, we parted ways with the twins, but before that, Alize wanted a word with us alone, so we went to the location, which she marked on our map, talked, and Alize, finally at peace with what has happened, decides she's going to walk a new path, and we ourselves, of course, decide that this course is what is best. And now we're back to ourselves. Me, Amadeus Aeon, of course, and his story and what he is traversing into with his story. So, after I parted ways with Alize, I went to Ul'dah to search for more clues of my father. I figured I might as well continue on with this quest, since the Scions are not in any need of me at present. And that pretty much the Warrior of Light himself has things well in hand, as the Scions go about rebuilding themselves and creating a brighter future for the realm. Whilst in Ul'dah, I travel to the pub to search for some answers and a bit of clues regarding my father, to see if anyone here in this bustling city of trade and knowledge, of course, with these things in mind, I began searching for clues. I start off by talking to the proprietress herself, Lady Momodi. I ask many questions and describe my father in as much detail as I can possibly remember him. But much to her dismay, she doesn't recall such a figure in her memories. But she knows someone who might, so she points me in the direction of the market board area. The person with which I'm directed is the master of the market himself, Cesaroga. Once more, I describe my father in great details. Cesaroga assures me that he recalls such a figure, but doesn't remember when or where. I'm troubled by this, but nonetheless relieved to hear that my father was here in his travels. The master of the markets suggests that maybe I try a different approach, and I agree. I decide perhaps there is another way to find him. rather than just asking around. So, what I decide to do with that information in mind is I decide it might be best if I go ask one with many clues as to the inner workings of the Echo. In which case, I travel to the new Scion's headquarters in Modona. It is here that I speak to a dear friend, none other than the leader of the Scions herself, Minfilia. I ask her several questions in regards to the Echo, and while she is not privy to a lot of information that contains within the Echo, she does nonetheless clear up a few things. One, that it is possible to look back into my own memories with the Echo, and two, that perhaps I can find clues by reading my father's journal, which might lead me to the right direction. I ask, of course, Minfilia how the Scions are faring since their trip here, and she assures me everything is well in place, as well as that Alphino has begun recruiting for his new platoon of sellswords and adventurers to form an organization that will serve the greater realm above known as the Crystal Graves. Helping him is the Warrior of Light, joining others to his cause. I tell Minfilia to bid Alphino well for me and hope that his success pays off. I, on the other hand, continue my search for my father. I take a moment to myself to do exactly as Minfilia suggested. I read through the pages of my father's journal and try to think back using the Echo as my guide. I enter into the most deepest focus I can possibly put myself into. And just as I'm on the verge of recollecting a certain memory, I'm interrupted by the ringing of my link pearl. I pull it out from my satchel and answer the call. The call is from Captain Jack. He has requested my aid in locating a certain thief. A thief which is so unnoticed that they can't help but wonder if there's something ill afoot or something not quite right, and they could use someone of my expertise. So I agree and I return to Limsa as bid, so that Captain Jack can give me more details. I make way for their headquarters, naturally, the dutiful sisters, in the lower decks. I'm about halfway there until Underfoot halts me in my tracks. And he suggests to me that he's been guided to pursue the same investigation. So, the two of us decide to work together. And we decide to trace our footsteps, or the thief's footsteps, sorry, which ends up in Wineport. We begin asking around, which one patron of Wineport says there is this queerly dressed woman with a bit of a interesting accent, if you will, who may have some knowledge of the thief of which we seek. So we seek her out, and it's exactly as the eyewitness reported. This fair maiden had indeed had a strange dialect, one which was actually quite familiar to me in my mind. I couldn't place my tongue on it at first, but it was very familiar, and I could not help but wonder, by the manner of her speech, as well as the bow of which she did upon leaving us, if she might be one of my own country. She hurries off, though. Underfoot decides that this is quite suspicious behavior, so we pursue. Stealthily, of course, so not to be detected. As we are silently following behind, we find a couple of dead bodies. This alarms Underfoot, and he wonders, could we be dealing with a killer of a thief? I see something glimmering upon the corpse and decide to pick it up. What I find is a soul crystal, but one I'm not familiar with, per se. Embedded in this soul crystal is a sort of pinwheel shape, or star, if you will. But nonetheless, me and Underfoot continue on. We eventually find the maiden, however she is not alone. A figure darts out from the shadows, declaring that she has something that he needs. Not one to give in to crooks as Amadeus is, myself. I decide to jump right in and defend this woman. Blades drawn and standing between her and her perpetrator. This fellow is quite interesting, to say the least. He speaks much better Eorzean than the woman behind me, of course. No hint of much of a dialect, but still, I thought I heard what appeared to be a Doman word from my own country of Othard. The woman behind me dashes out at this fellow, with similar blades drawn. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I see a flying object fall and hit the ground between her and this queer fellow. And then out jumps another fellow from the shadows, this time decked in what appears to be a traditional shinobi armor. And that's how I knew, for this fellow was indeed speaking in Doman tongue. I wasn't paying fully attention to their conversation between these three, but from what I gathered, this Redbeak fellow was someone who is definitely their object for coming here, and that they are not the thieves for which we had sought. The queer fellow dressed in red retreats. And then the other two begin to speak, and they're speaking in Doman. But upon a closer look of the fellow dressed in shinobi armor, a memory flickers in the back of my mind, and then it hits me, and I realize. So I call out to the fellow, "Oboro! Is that you?" He is shocked and surprised. "How do you know my name, good sir?" he asks in Doman. I bow politely to him in our own traditional fashion from our hometown, just to signify that I am a fellow countryman. He is surprised, but also happy to see that I know their traditions, and that, upon looking up closer look on me, he also realizes who I am. The two of us exchange a bit of old familiar conversation between two friends. And then I ask him, "What brings you here, Oboro? Why are you so far away from home?" To which he jabs at me jokingly, "I could say the same thing of you, my old friend. How long has it been since we've met?" "Too long, I say." But he suggests we talk further matters back at his headquarters, which he procured back in eastern Lenocia. We agree and follow suit. Before I take off with them, Underfoot says he'll deliver his report to Jack, and I nod and agree that I will handle the rest from here. Me and Oboro sort of have a little bit of a race, as he wishes to make sure that I haven't gone dull, he says. We race, and eventually we reach the location, I just a foot ahead of him. He grasps and huffs for air, and then says, I see you've definitely not lost your touch since our time apart." And then, of course, I jab at him and say, "Well, to me it seems like you have definitely gotten a bit faster. What rank are you now, Oboro?" To which I am surprised, but he says he is a Jonin now. Dramatic effect, of course, sorry. He says he will explain, of course, everything inside, so we both step inside. There inside, my old friend describes everything in great detail. His purpose for being here, and for why they are hunting that Redbeak fellow. I am troubled, however, by the news he tells me. He tells me that Doma is in ruins, and that the Empire had seized full control over Ulthar territories of which Doma governed. I am very worried and concerned. Concerned for my mother, of course, and my grandmother, who would still be there, who I still hope in my heart and mind they're still there, or at the least somehow escaped the chaos and carnage. But nonetheless, I am apathetic to my friend's cause, and I wish to help him further. So I ask him to let me lend him a hand while I'm here. He nods in agreement, and it tells me more of his mission and why they have come so far. It's revealed to me that this traitor named Karas Redbeak had stabbed the back of all his brethren shinobi, and that because of his betrayal, Doma had suffered a heavy loss in the war front to regain freedom from Garlemald. This news was indeed grim to me. But if I can put down the life of a traitor, then I will do so for the sake of my country as well as my mother, if she is gone to me. Vivoro tells me, however, that at my current skill level, it will not be enough to go toe-to-toe with this fellow, and that I will need instruction in the shinobi arts. To which I stoically agree. Yes, perhaps you're right, my friend. That temperament with which Cardos had, as I witnessed, definitely speaks volumes of the level of experience and skill between us. If I were to go toe-to-toe with him now, I would definitely fall. So I ask Oboro, do you know of such a teacher who can instruct me? To which he nods and suggests, while he may not be a master, that he is just a mere jonin, he will instruct me in all that he can. So me and Oboro, along with the soul crystal of which I picked up earlier, which Oboro himself allowed me to have as a keepsake to further my knowledge in the art of shinobi, myself and him train. We train rigorously for many days and many nights. He, of course, is curious as to why I came to Eorzea. And I tell him of my plight and why I left home those years ago. Oboro remembers my father ever so slightly, and I ask if he may have returned to Doma in that time that I've been gone. But he assures me no such fellow meeting the characteristics of my father was reported seeing, nor bodies found that might be his. But he nonetheless assures me that he will do all he can to return my generous favor in helping him rid the world of the traitor Karas. The training is very tough, to be sure. It is not so easy for someone not too skilled in the shinobi arts to just pick it up on their own. I have had to train both mind and body at the same time in order to be flexible enough, as well as have the accurate speed to execute what are called mudras in order to form ninjutsu. Being so low of a level, however, I was only able to pick up on the shuriken. And as for the fighting skills itself, I merely had to keep doing what I had been doing before, as Oboro had stated it. At times, however, it was frustrating and hard for me to keep on training when I was worried about the state of home, about not being able to find my mother when I had promised her I would find my father. I had entertained thoughts of perhaps giving up on my quest for searching my father and returning home to make sure my mother was okay. But Oboro there reassured me that once someone is on the path, they should keep with it no matter what. And I realized, of course, in my mind, he is indeed right. I should not let this news frighten me or dissuade me from my current path. After I found my father, I will indeed rush home to my mother in hopes that she's still alive. Though it took many weeks and quite close to a month, I had finally become strong enough in Oboro's mind, and from my hard, rigorous training, I'd finally become strong enough to be able to take on Kara. So the two of us, we began running around and looking around to see where this traitor would be. However, we need not have traveled far, for he came to us. Our headquarters was assaulted by him and his traitorous shinobi. Me and Oboro rushed back as fast as we could. The guard who watched by the door suggested that he took off in another direction. Me and Oboro gave chase. And sure enough, Redbeak Karas was there standing in front of us, waiting to confront us. We faced him in mortal combat. hoping to deliver a final blow. However, just as we were about to do so, he had halted us and suggested we take a greater look at who the real traitor is. When asked to explain by Oboro, a shocking revelation is given to us. That it was not Karas who was the actual traitor, that he was merely a pawn of the real traitor. The one whom Oboro respected the most, in fact. And that is his dear old master, Master Gekkai. Oboro did not wish to believe this, and neither did I. For Gekkai was always someone who was quite faithful to the Emperor of Doma, Lord Kaien. We would not think, both of me and Oboro, that Gekkai would betray Kaien. So, Oboro wished to find out the whole truth and see if Redbeak is a liar or not. Before his demise, Redbeak suggested we go to a certain storehouse in Lower Lanosia. It is said there that Gekkai would be meeting with clients to have shipments received and sent off to the embassy of which Garlemald held within Eorzea. Oboro, however, was not so agreeable this time, and rather than consulting us, decided to head off on his own. Worried for his safety, Tsubame decides that it would be best if we keep close eye on him to make sure he doesn't end up another victim of the traitor Gekkai. We are able to catch up with Oboro just in time as he begins to speak to Gekkai himself, revealing his hand in the atrocity which brought Doma to its knees. Seeing such remarks from Gekkai's mouth lit a flame of fury in me as well as Oboro. For how could he talk about the citizens of Doma, his own people, in such a manner, mocking them for being common people compared to his fellow shinobi. Deciding that he's had enough, Oboro decides that he's going to put down Gekai. And that's when me and Tsubame make our move and move in to assist. Gekai scoffs at me, of course, telling that his two students, "You would depend on the skills of a sellsword. What shame you bring to our shinobi brethren." To which I retort, in our own native tongue, "I am not just a sellsword trader. I'm the one who will be here to see you die." Gekai is shocked to hear that I know their native tongue. But nonetheless, he calls his gang in to test us, so he says. We quickly dispatch his gang of shinobi that he trained. And then we move on to the main event itself, fighting Gekai. True to his namesake as a shinobi master, his skills are impressive, and they push us to the edge. However, with our combined friendship and prowess in the shinobi art, we are able to bring Gekai to his knee. The trader admits that we are undoubtedly skilled, and instead extends an offer to us. "Why not come with me instead? Abandon your foolish quest. I can give you power," he says. Tsubame speaks up. "It is not power that we seek, Master Gekai, for we've had this whole time within us, as you can no doubtably see for yourself. What we seek is retribution for your crimes, and to absolve those who perished in defense of our home, Doma." Gekai laughs. "What nonsense." To which Oboro draws his blade once more and etches closer to Gekai. Gekai, of course, realizing that his attempt to bargain has failed, begins instead begging for his life like the cur he is. But Oboro was not having any of it and edged ever closer, ready to deliver the decisive blow. Gekai is sobbing and blubbering in his knees, begging to be spared. As Oboro is about to strike, he wanes, and instead throws a dagger at Gekai's feet. "Be gone from our sight, traitor, and don't let us find you again, and for if we do, you will be sorry and will not have a second chance." And with that, our business is concluded, so we believe. As we're beginning to return to the warehouse, Gekai, I sense some malice with the echo in me. It senses Gekai moving and grabbing the blade that Oboro threw at his feet. "Foolish students of mine, you should have learned by now not to drop your guard." He rushes at Oboro. Tsubame calls out, "No! Oboro, watch out!" Luckily, I had time to form one mudra in this instance. The one mudra which I had mastered perfectly. The Fuma Shuriken. I summon the Shuriken and toss it quickly at Gekkai. It hits him, taking his head off. And the traitor is thus no more. Oboro and Tsubame both sigh relief. And me, I close my eyes and then look up to the distant starry sky. The death of this traitor has given me a small measure of peace. However, I still wish to know whether or not my mother is still alive. Such a pitiful man you were, Master. If only you had accepted that things would be better if we were free instead of in the grasp of the Empire. Leave the body to us, Tsubame suggests. We will make sure that his body is disposed of as well as the other shinobi here that he had brought into his treachery. I nod in agreement and decide to let them handle this. Just as we're about to do so, however, a familiar voice comes from behind. And to our shock, that traitor, supposed traitor, Kardas Redbeak stands before us once more. I ready my weapons, prepared for another battle. But he reassures us he's not there as our enemy, and kicks aside to the ground the last piece to my traditional shinobi garb, which I was supposed to be awarded for becoming a successful shinobi. Then he reveals to us that Gekkai had faked his death before, and that the deal he had made was to secure the shinobi village of which Oboro resided in, that his fellow shinobi be spared and allowed to continue their practice of shinobi arts. And on that note, that Redbeak Kardas had found out that secret, of course, and had no choice but to follow Gekkai. For Gekkai had held a blade to his throat and suggested he'd come or die, for he knows too much. So Kardas took up the opportunity, of course, to learn more about our enemy, the Empire, as well as keep some tabs on Gekkai's inner dealings with the Empire. Oboro is relieved to hear that Kardas has indeed been on our side the whole time, and suggests to him that he return to the village, the shinobi village, with him. Redbeak, of course, sighs and shakes his head. "No, I cannot. That place is not for me. I instead will traverse these lands and learn more. For I've always wanted to leave our village, you know." Oboro sounds disappointed at this. "I see," he says. "Then perhaps it is destined that we go this route." Which Kardas jokes with him. And then, after Cardos leaves, we also depart and head back to the warehouse. I ask, Oboro, is there anything else more you have to teach me? To which he shakes his head no. He has taught me all that he can. And that if I should seek further training, then perhaps I should try seeking out the hidden scrolls. This I nod to him and say, very well. Thank you for all of your help, Oboro. And he has thanked me as well. And before I bid off on my journey to seek my father once more, I tell him that should he ever need me again, just call and I will be right there. On that note, I contact Jack once more and let him know that the situation was resolved. He is relieved and wishes me luck on my continued journey to seek out my father. Being stronger now and having acquired some new skills, I'm quite confident now that I can get closer to finding my father. And so begins my long journey of finding answers and seeking clues across Eorzea. My travels, of course, are interrupted once more. And this time, I'm summoned to Ul'dah by Alphino. Alphino tells me that someone with whom I might be quite acquainted with has appeared on the shores of Thanalan. A Doman-speaking woman who is covered from head to toe. Another shinobi friend of Oboro's, I think, to myself. So I answer Alphino's summon, and saying that I'll be right there. Upon arriving, I see 3 people. Definitely dressed in some rather poor and shoddy clothing, to say the least. And they look like they've been through quite a lot. Excluding, of course, the woman in the middle, who is definitely dressed up and covered from head to toe. I recall something from my childhood. A familiar looking girl when I would visit my grandmother. In my memory, I remember the girl saying she was an Auri, and that the reason that they had covered themselves up was so not to scare the local people or make them think of them as Oni or demons sent to devour souls and kidnap children. Of course, the younger me was shaken by this, as the young girl who was covered laughed and giggled at me. I had wondered if this was the self-same individual, but I don't recall ever getting her name. As we take a seat in the quicksands, Alfred and I speak to the woman. She introduces herself as Yugiri and says that she has traveled very far from Doma, much like my childhood friend Obordo, and that she was seeking asylum, saying that her people are in desperate need, and I definitely feel that plight. Seeing that the other two with her, their hands are badly bruised and their faces covered in dirt and dust. They have indeed gone through a struggle, and I wish to help them in any way I can. So I told Alfino this, that I would indeed do all in my power to make sure that they're helped. Alfino nods and says he will do all he can on his end as well. So with that in mind, we are scheduled a meeting with the Sultana of Ul'dah herself, Nanamo Ul'Namo. Alongside her is the Syndicate, which is part of the governing body of Ul'dah, and the Flame General Rauban al-Din, who spearheads and leads the Immortal Flames, the military body of Ul'dah. In this meeting, Yugiri explains her plight and all that has happened. And the General Alden asks, of course, how many are survivors of this atrocious event? To which he said, about 200 have come with her. And then, of course, one of the syndicate leaders speaks up, the fellow by the name of Lolorito. He is rather harsh in his tone, I find, and find myself clenching my teeth as he speaks. He speaks of matters of commerce, and that the worth of a man is not by what they've experienced, but rather what they have to offer. I'm quite infuriated by this, but Yugiri places a hand by my arm, suggesting that I keep myself calm. To which I inhale and exhale out, and let myself remain calm for the time being. They continue on with the debates. The end result, of course, being quite unsatisfactory. And Yugiri is quite torn from this result as well. For there's nothing that Nanamo or Rauban are able to do without the consent of the Syndicate. However, Rauban has suggested that they will provide provisions where needed. Similarly, of course, Alfino has a talk with Lady Momodi, the owner of the Quicksands, as well as a guide for many adventurers. She also decides to help us in our plight. She gives us in rooms to sleep in, as well as provides food for me and my people, to which I am eternally grateful, and suggest that if she should ever need a man for any task, that I will be there to assist her. Seeking further measures, Alfino decides perhaps the Domans can find some help within the walls of Revenant's Toll, the new headquarters of the Scions. And so he begins speaking to the leaders and owners of Mordona, Revenant's Toll. And they agree that yes, they could use some more help on deck and more hands to assist. So they indeed begin building up a contract with my people to help them find a place of somewhat residence for at least a time, until they're able to pick up their own feet and then find suitable lands elsewhere to which they can call a new home. I am here with them, of course, helping them out in any way that I can. My journey thus on a temporary halt, as I want to make sure that my people are well protected and safe. So we secure suitable transport for them to head to Mordona and Revenant's Toll. It is a long journey, but I sit and encourage with my fellow countrymen and exchange stories of home, as well as this land of which I came to seek out my father. We arrived safely in Mordona in Revenant's Toll. We speak with our representative, Staffborn, a big and roguish Rogadin fellow. He provides us with our assignments, of course, giving us all the work that he can possibly find for us to do. With our help, Revenant's Toll begins to become quite the bustling outpost, and it attracts more and more adventurers by the day. And not only that, but a very wealthy merchant has also taken up residence here, the Lady Rowena and her House of Splendors. In exchange for tomestones of old and forgotten knowledge, she gives to the adventurers weapons of great power and armor of much strength, so that they can continue to adventure. I myself tried this at my hand for just a little while. I didn't want to get too deeply into it, of course, because they say once an obsession has you, it never lets go. So I only entertained it for just a short while and then continued to help my people. However, a crisis occurs with which the Scions decide to call upon the aid of all able bodies. A crisis in my father's own home, of the place of which he was raised and known best at, Limsa Lomensa, the conflict being between the fish-like beastmen, the Sahagin, and the Lomensan people. Similarly, I am told that I was also trying to be contacted by the Maelstrom, in regards to this notion. So I decided it's worth looking into, and I meet with the other scions. Yugiri is also here on business and just happens to step by and offer some assistance as well. Accordingly, what the crisis is that the Sahagin are readying to summon their god, the dreadful sea serpent Leviathan. And myself alongside Yugiri agree that we should help. And so, we travel along the Warrior of Light, as well as Minfilia herself and the other Archons. Archons Y'shtola and Thancred. And thus does a new chapter begin. That's all I have time for now, everyone. I hope you really enjoyed the storytelling, as always. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe down below, or leave me a like if you liked my videos. Thanks again, and, as always, I look forward to seeing you in the next video.